Hey everybody, Detective Fungi here. We're back with another paint tutorial. For this we're going to go on with tyrannids again. We're going to focus on the gargoyles. The gargoyles essentially are basically a tyrannid that basically flies in one of the basic troops of it. So, for Hive Fleet Kronos, we just need, it's mostly a black exoskeleton with a red carapace. So, without further ado, we're going to re-base coat the black. So you may wonder, why do that again? It's because I missed some spots earlier and I wanted to save them just so I can show the preparation. So for this, we're going to use a base coat of a baden black. So what we're going to do, take some of baden black like so. We're going to use our bigger brush for this. Take some of baden black, put on the palette. We're going to set it down a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. Perfect. All right, so I did cover it all well, but if you notice, there's some little spots like right here. And just paint very smoothly, and also right here, here. Just wherever you wherever you need the base coat the black on first. And this is quite a small miniature, so well, not really small, but still. Should be painting of it should be easy. All right, now. With the carapace now base coated, we're going to start highlighting. So for this, we're going to go with a smaller brush, a smaller dry brush like this, and we're going to start highlighting the exoskeleton. For this, we're going to use a very light dry brush of Skaven Blight Dinge. So take a Skaven Blight Dinge, shake it up like so. So what we're going to do, take our flat brush right here, and just get a little bit of Skaven Blight Dinge, just not much. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush the technique. Dry brush technique is basically where you take paint from the brush like so, wipe it off on a paper towel like I'm doing off camera, because you already know how I do it. So what we're going to do is this. So if you look where the exoskeleton is, specifically on the underparts like right here, you just want to gently sweep your brush all over. See? As you can see, it's kind of highlighting and still leaving the black in the recesses, which is exactly what we want. And also don't forget, you can do this on the arms, fingers, and especially the head. And especially on the tail, but again, you don't have to do the tail, I'm just doing it just so that way you can see the highlights. See? You can barely see it, but then again, that's the point of the black base coat. All right, and that's the highlight done. All right, now with the black part details now done, we are now going to focus on the wings. So for this, we're going to use a base coat of Bugman's Glow. So Bugman's Glow, again, is a base paint for the skin tones. So what we're going to do is going to take a little bit of Bugman's Glow, not much, and just put it in our palette like so. The reason why I say not much is because we are going to need a little more later, but then again, it doesn't have much fleshy details on this model. So after we have the Bugman's Glow in the palette, thin it down a little bit with some water, just a little bit. Thinning down the paint basically just helps make sure it runs more smoothly on the miniature when you paint. Perfect. All right, so now what we're going to do is start base coating everything else. So base coat the wing membrane and everything around it. Try to avoid the arms, but don't worry if you do, you can just go to correct it back with some baden black later. And I'm basically just showing where you base coat this. I'll tidy the mistakes off camera. You may need 2 thin coats because, you know, Bugman's Glow over a black undercoat is not going to be as solid as at first, but don't worry, you can just rework on it later, and I'll tidy up the mistakes off camera. Alright, now with the Bugman's Glow now base coated, I also did the underside of the wings as well. So for this, we're going to basically just kind of start highlighting the wings. So tyrannid wing membrane is not really one piece, it's kind of line worked a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start highlighting. For this, we're going to use Cadian Flesh Tone. So what we're going to do, take some Cadian Flesh Tone, shake it up first. Let me make sure that my paint is dry in the dead palette. So take some Cadian Flesh Tone, we're going to take some on the palette right here. Stuff like that. So what we're going to do, put a little bit of water in it, just thin it down a little bit, that's all. Alright, so what we're going to do is, this is a little different, but watch this. Take off most of the paint off the brush, so what we're going to do, watch this. We're basically going to do this. We're going to do this all over the membrane. You don't have to do this on the underside. We just leave the underside with Bugman's glow so that way it can look like it's flying over like stuff and it's casting shadow. So normally this technique would be called feathering, but then again we're going a lot wider, so that way we can just cover more area. And also if you want to thin it down a little more, that's completely fine. I'm just doing it like this so that way I can get the nice solid coat over it. Okay, and also this little membrane right here. You don't have to, but yes, still. Alright, and I'll be right back when I finish with the other stuff. Alright, now with the Cadian flesh tone now applied, we are now going to apply another flesh tone. So for this, we're going to keep the Cadian flesh tone we had earlier, and we're just going to add some white to it. Not much. You could of course use Kislev flesh, but I just like using this mix. So for this, we're going to use a little bit of white scar. So what we're going to do, take some white scar. Basically, what we're going to do, take a little bit of it on the palette. We don't need much because we don't want to make it too white. So what we're going to do is like this, and add the white scar. As you can see, it's slightly darker, slightly lighter than the Cadian flesh tone from earlier. Then it's down a little bit. So what we're going to do is this. So if you look here, we're going to basically just going to do the same thing, but even farther away. Thin down a little bit so that way the effect is nice and smooth. As you can see, it's working pretty good. Let me readjust my hand just for a second. Again, you don't have to do this for the underside. We're just doing this for the upper side or the top part. All right, now with that one last highlight almost on. When I say one last, that's for the actual like wing effect, but we are going to do one more. So we're going to take a little more white scar, and we're going to mix it a little bit more into our flesh mix from earlier. Reason being is that we can have one final highlight for the wings. I'll show you where, just to give me a second. Nice light tone, perfect. Let me wash off my brush. We are now going to move on to our very, very fine brush, meaning this one right here. So what we're going to do, take some our light mix, and we're basically just going to put some on the palette, not too much on our brush. So what we're going to do is going to highlight the absolute edge. See, like right here. And if you want, you can do the same feathering technique again, like with this color, like we did earlier. But I just want to do a nice final edge highlight so that way I could sharpen most of the details. All right, and that's the highlight done. All right, now we are now going to start the other base coat. So now for this, we're going to base coat all over the black armor or the carapace with Evil Sun Scarlet. So yes, check out the paints like so. Now, Evil Sun Scarlet is a layer paint, so we are going to need 2 to 3 layers because it is a layer paint. However, this is the perfect color or starting color for the carapace. So what we're going to do, take some Evil Sun Scarlet, put it on our palette like so. We will need a little bit of this, so what we're going to do, thin it down with some water. Not much, just a little bit so that way it can flow nice and smoothly. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the carapace parts. So for the carapace parts of the gargoyle, we're going to focus the one on his back, his head, and on his weapon as well. I'll show you where in just a second. Start base coating right here. And the carapace goes about right here, and that's the final part. And for here on his head, we're basically going to focus right here. And there's one back panel right here on the round part, like right here. And his horn on his carapace right here. So just take your time and just base coat with all this layer paint. Alright, now with the red armor now base coated, or carapace, I keep on calling it armor, my apologies. So we're going to show, this is a perfect time to delegate. By delegate, I mean it's time to work on another part of the miniature. So basically what I mean is that while one part is drying, and if you're able to handle the rest, then go for it. So now we're going to shade off the wing and just finish the wings. So we're going to take a wash. We're going to use Flesh Wash by Army Painter. So what we're going to do, check out the paint like so. We are going to thin this down quite a bit so that way we don't really over darken the effect that we're looking for. Okay, so watch this. So what we're going to do, squeeze some of this paint onto the palette like so, and we're going to thin it down with quite a bit of water. So that way we keep the effect nice and thin, nice and subtle, but also it's really effective at the same time. So basically what we're going to do is this. So basically we're going to shade all over the flesh parts where the wings are. Literally all over. Just try to make sure it doesn't pool like anywhere in the flat parts, which is pretty much everywhere. But don't worry, if it pools, just make sure you just soak it up before it dries and just move it somewhere else. And one thing you do want to do is that you definitely want to shade the underside as well. Alright, now with the wings finally done, we are now going to focus on another detail while the red carapace is still drying. For this, we're going to focus on the tongue. So, not all the tyranid models will have tongues that are visible, so what we're going to do is we're going to start mixing a little bit. So, right here, if you see this Evil Sun Scarlet, it's still wet, so we're going to mix in some Screamer Pink. So, what we're going to do, take some Screamer Pink from the pot, like so, and we're going to mix a little bit in with our red, just a little bit. You may be wondering, well, what's the purpose? The purpose is that way so we get a nice, unique tongue color. What we're going to do is going to pick up the miniature before I'm just making sure. So we're going to hold it steady, and we're going to paint in the tongue. So for the tongue, it's basically just right here. Again, not all the tyranid gargoyle models will have the tongue like showing, but if you're going to paint the tongue, ones that do have the tongue sticking out, this is the perfect color for it. Alright, now with the tongue now base coated, we're now going to do the teeth. For this, we're going to turn to white scar once again. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some white scar. We are going to put it on the palette on the table this time. So what we're going to do, focus to where the teeth are. And basically what we're going to do, make sure there's no pun to paint on our brush, just a little bit. And we're going to go very steadily and kind of hold your breath if you want to. So basically what we're going to do is this. Start base coating in all the teeth. Same for the other side. Alright, and that's the teeth done. Alright, now with those details done, we're going to use the same wash on all of those. For this, we're going to use a wash of Agrax Earthshade. So, for this, we're going to shake up the wash like so. Just make sure you shake it up good so that way, you know, it doesn't stick or whatever. So, take some Agrax Earthshade. We're going to open up the pot. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade right here, and we're going to put it on our palette like so. So where we're going to put this wash is basically all over where we just base coated. So make sure you unload the excess all over the red carapace, as well as the carapace on the weapon, or the flesh borer. Almost dropped it. Great. And just soak up all the excess because it sometimes tends to pool. And basically just don't forget the tongue and the teeth. Perfect, and that's the Agrax Earthshade applied. And while the wash is drying, we're now going to paint in the eyes. For this, we're going to use a little bit of Uriel Yellow. So, check out the paint like so. We are going to thin this down a little bit because we don't need much of this. But for real, we still need to thin it down. So what we're going to do, take some Uriel Yellow. Yes, so basically we don't need much because we're just dotting in the eyes. So for the eyes, they're kind of difficult to see. But for right here, it's right in this recess right here. Let me get my extend my print. And we're going to gently just dot in the eyes, like right here. So we're going to end on the other side too. Just dot in the eyes. if you want, you can do it like this and make like a little eye glow effect, even though their eyes don't really glow. But again, you can do that anyway. All right, and that's the eyes done. All right, now we're going to start relayering the carapace. So for this, we're going to go back to Evil Sun Scarlet. So for Evil Sun Scarlet again, we're just going to take this again, put on our paint. We are going to need a little more. So what we're going to do is we're going to start actually stippling, or like I call it. So take some Evil Sun Scarlet, put it on the palette. We are going to thin this down quite a little bit because we don't need much for lines. So what we're going to do is this. So I like to hold the miniature backwards so that way I can paint towards the edges. So watch this. When you paint towards the edges, what we're going to do is this. The reason why I call it a stipple effect is because it looks like lines and it kind of looks uneven, which is perfect for the Tyranid carapace. As you can see, the highlight is also kind of subtle, which is really awesome. That means it's blending in. So it is a little difficult when you get to the tiny parts of the carapace, but don't worry, we're basically going to do that as well. And while I'm painting this, I'm not going to cut right now because I'm just going to tell you something cool. Fun fact about Hive Fleet Kronos, this type of Hive Fleet for the Tyranids is literally the only one that was specifically created to fight against the forces of chaos. Yeah, so essentially this is the pretty much the Tyranids that focus mainly on fighting, not really fighting chaos, but the main Tyranid Hive Fleet that can combat them. Tyranids can hold their own, but this is the only specific fleet that is designed for a specific faction. And also when it comes to the carapace on his head, it's pretty much the same thing. We're gonna basically just gonna focus on the edges, like on his horn carapace right here. And if you want, you can also, we're gonna layer it back up, as well as these little edges right here. All right, and I'll be right back when we apply the second highlight. So what we're gonna do now is gonna apply the final highlight, which is we're gonna use Wild Rider Red. So reason why we're going to use Wild Rider Red is that way, this is basically the lightest highlight that we can do for the carapace. You can use one step further and use orange, but I just want to keep it red per the guide that it says for the paint scheme. We don't need much of this again, and we're going to use our very fine brush. So we're going to paint in little lines like so, like I said. So what we're going to do, it's going to start just painting little lines all over. I'm going to keep on doing this. All right, I'll be right back when we finish it off. All right, now with that final highlight done, this is our gargoyle painted for Hive Fleet Kronos. So as you can see, we basically just did the exoskeleton first, then the wings, and then the carapace as well, and the other details. So the reason why this called for like flesh paints is because the gargoyle is one of the few like Tyranid models with flesh details that are similar to human, but you can paint your miniatures as much as you want. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial on how to paint Tyranids. And I really hope you also enjoyed watching this video. Happy painting. Bye bye.